Good evening, everyone. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this meeting is called to order. First thing on the agenda is the Citizens Forum. We have, I believe, two individuals here from CSA 7 to talk about the youth apprenticeship. This hasn't been noticed for the meeting, but we've agreed to address it in Citizens Forum. So if nobody on the board has any objection, we'll waive the 2-minute requirement and we'll hear from Adam and David. Anybody have an objection? No? Okay.
And they provided with this. It's kind of a snapshot.
Welcome.
I don't know where your speaker is.
You can come
You
on.
can speak anywhere.
Yeah,
Okay,
fine.
so my name is David Gordon. I work with CSA 7. In the last year, I served Pulaski High School as the school-based coach for the Youth Apprenticeship Program. I also work in the Career and Technical Education Coordinator capacity for CSA 7. So I write and manage the Carl Perkins Grant, and I work with your staff with the Technical Incentive Grant. CSA 7 and the Green Bay Chamber of Commerce created a new model for youth apprenticeship for last school year, and we shifted the way that we approach youth apprenticeship. Now, if you're not familiar with the Youth Apprenticeship Program, it is a state-certified program sponsored by the Department of Workforce Development. We are 100% grant funded, so it doesn't require any district funding to support that program. In the past, the Green Bay Chamber would attend school occasionally to connect with students, really relied heavily on the school counselors. We acknowledge that the school counselors' role is pretty significant, their workload is increasing, and they needed some support to really do the program justice. So we redesigned the way we imagined the Youth Apprenticeship Program. We put a person in the building, and last year that was myself, to have conversations with students around career intent, career exploration. We would set the students up with job shadows, help them develop resumes, partner them with local employers, which in some cases ultimately led to a youth apprenticeship. Now, youth apprenticeship is available to juniors and seniors. Students work for an employer for a period of 450 hours, and at the end of their experience, they're evaluated by a state-certified skills checklist. Upon successful completion of that program, the students earn an industry-recognized credential. In the information that was shared with you, there's kind of a brief description of youth apprenticeship. I included some of the team member biographies for myself and Mr. Adam Strasberg, who has joined us tonight. Adam will be taking over the role of the school-based coaching position for Pulaski High School next year as I step out of that role and into the regional coordinator role. Adam was a Pulaski graduate, is very familiar with the community. I know that he will do a spectacular job in that role. I included the component on the Technical Incentive Grant down below because something that you're going to notice increase for your district is the amount of funding that becomes available to you through that Technical Incentive Grant. Every student that successfully completes the Youth Apprenticeship Program qualifies your district for that Technical Incentive Grant. In the 21-22 school year, you had about 49 students participating in youth apprenticeship with about a 50% successful completion rate. Last year, we had 100 students in youth apprenticeship with a 90% successful completion rate. So we've seen not only the participation has increased, but also the number of students that are able to successfully complete the program has increased. Some fun stats kind of related to that program. Approximately $630,000 were earned by Pulaski High School youth apprenticeship students during the 22-23 school year. That's a substantial economic impact on the community. It also results in excellent employability skills and building for those students that participated. Our average wage for those students was about $14 an hour. We see that range is fairly broad between healthcare and manufacturing, some of the other fields. I believe our highest earning students were in the upper $20 an hour range. So pretty impressive stat for a high school student. For the 23-24 school year, we currently have 60 students that have turned in all of the paperwork and are actively working. We had 140 different students express interest in the program. We anticipate our numbers for the 23-24 school year will be approximately 115. Not every student that expresses interest in youth apprenticeship ends up in a placement. Sometimes it's a matter of it's just not a right fit for that student's schedule, or after some conversations with the student, they decide to go in a different direction. Those are some of the high-level overviews. There are some statistics about the Northeast Wisconsin Youth Apprenticeship Consortium as a whole included in your materials. Our region represented 30% of the growth in youth apprenticeship in the state last year, and that's just the greater Green Bay area. We are changing the way youth apprenticeship is viewed at the state level, and we were actually able to bring additional funding in at the state level to the youth apprenticeship program. The Department of Workforce Development received an additional $3 million for next year, and they're going to receive an additional $1 million for a total of $4 million increase the following year. In addition to that, we were able to lobby for an increase in the technical incentive grant funding. The problem that we encountered is that the amount issued per student is prorated based on the number of statewide applicants. It's capped at $1,000 per student. Typically, districts receive about $800. The state was also able to increase the amount of money to the technical incentive grant by $3 million as well. So we see the total increase in support of $6 million statewide in the youth apprenticeship and technical incentive grant program. We've really built a presence with the students in the high school. Adam's going to continue doing a lot of that great work. But we just wanted to come tonight and share some of the things that we've worked on, answer any questions that you might have. Adam will be at the high school 5 days a week. He'll be available to work with students throughout the school day during their PLT or study hall time. We've also worked very closely with the school counselors to help students arrange other types of career exploration activities. We attended the job fair, helped students make connections with employers that way as well. So thank you for your time, and if there's any questions that you have, field that at this time.
Sounds like a great program to me.
Yeah, keep up the good work.
A lot of numbers you threw at us, but really
Yeah.
great things, it sounds like. Yeah, it's definitely something to be excited about.
Will Pulaski be your only school, or you do several schools
I will be here full-time at Pulaski, yeah,
running this program?
running the program, you bet.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Moving on to the first agenda item, which is envisioning our future presentation.
So I'm going to kick off the presentation tonight, and I've asked, all of us, board members, myself, our teams here in the district, as well as all of our community members, have all taken an active part in this role. I guess I want to start out just by saying that this is an ongoing process. I think a lot of times when school districts are working on a strategic plan, maybe as it's been called, or an antiquated term for that, sometimes that plan is in a physical binder and it gets, we do the good work and then it gets put up on a shelf. This process is very active. It should be fluid, it should be flexible, it needs to be ongoing. It's a stretch over a period of time, and as we know, things in education are constantly changing, so we want to ensure that we're doing right by our community, our students, and our families. And so when we're envisioning our future, it was really appropriate tonight to have David and Adam kind of talk a little bit about what's happening with our youth, because when they get to that spot in the high school where we're really talking about how are we stepping out and preparing our kids for the future, this is where we have to ensure that we're getting that work done, not only as a school district, but as a school community. So this work has been very exciting. I was able to take part in each of the pillars that we worked on by taking part in the sessions that were there. And I really believe that the work and the future of the Pulaski Community School District is truly grounded in this. I think that, Jenny, if you wanna, are you gonna run the slides for us? When we met as a group, we really grounded ourselves in where were we, the structure and the bones of what was done in the planning before in 2017-18. We looked at that plan and we knew that it had very good bones and a very good structure to it. It was solid in what our mission, vision, and motto were as in the district. And when you take a look at that, of our mission to provide all students the opportunity to achieve knowledge and skills necessary to become contributing citizens in our diverse world, that is an ongoing piece that forever, as we all sit here, if we're elementary principals, if we're working in our high school and our middle school, we all know that no matter if the child is 5 or the child is 15, we're planning for that future that's coming for them. And then for us as citizens and working here in the district and in the community, we know that we want our kids to come back. I mean, here's a testament, right? We've got Adam coming back now, and he is a graduate from Pulaski, and now he's here to pay it forward in the way that he can with the expertise that he has to offer the district and his job moving forward. And then just some of our community members that took part in this work with us, business owners, the partnership, families that are just here that want to take part with us to ensure that we're truly offering the best education for our kids so that when they go out into the world to work, that they're ready to do that work, whether it's here or whether it's in our community or in our neighboring communities surrounding us, because we know that it's coming back. So it was good to know that we felt that our mission, vision, and motto were being met by the pillar work that we had. So here is our, again, just revisiting the structure or the, graphic that we have currently. A piece that's exciting for us is as we had changed and been using terminology all through the district, all means all. We had been hearing that as parents, as teachers, as staff members. We didn't really have that cited clearly on our graphic. So we thought that because that is something that we do take to heart and we spend so much time talking about through our PLC process, the professional learning communities process, it was definitely something that we wanted to embrace as a school district, having those high expectations and having these be that foundation for what the pillars are within the district. But in saying that, we also know that this is a piece, this could feel very straightforward and so, just maybe this isn't the best graphic. So we want to, as we did in our evening when we spent all that time together, we want our kids to be able to have some voice in that as well. And we know that a great opportunity would be for them to maybe collaborate, maybe through PHS Art or business and tech ed departments, and have them submit some updated representations or graphics of what envisioning our future could be. So we're kind of excited about going into the school year and knowing that that work is going to be be student driven and containing these pieces. But how does that look? Does it end up in a wheel? Does it end up in the same structure? And what is the interest and what conversations will come forward from our students as they are thinking about this work here in the district? Because they also have been a great part of that. So the process, this I had asked the board, since we had all taken part in that, if any of you would kind of like just to talk to this piece as we worked through, as you were at the event that evening, and then as you took part in some of that pillar work. So at this time, I'll just ask the board members if any of you or all of you would like to, just talk a little bit about the process, how the work has been coming about, and maybe some of the excitement or questions or pieces that you're excited to work on as we move forward between now and 2028.
I guess I'll start, and for that initial night, I was really encouraged with the number of stakeholders that we had come together in terms of staff, parents, community members, and especially students, and the students that were willing to speak up and engage in the process. It was really fun to be part of that and those discussions that occurred there. And in the breakout sessions particularly is where everybody was able to speak, and it was interesting to hear everybody's perspectives. And that was really where the work began, and then the individual sessions came out from that. I participated in the teaching and learning session, and that was held in this room. What was encouraging to me is that, much like Allie said, kind of starting with that vision and what our thoughts were, that really didn't change other than some wordsmithing to modernize the language, but that really the foundation has been there and continues to be there, and the thinking continues to be the same. So it's just really making it look and sound what it should look like for 2023.
I was at the original meeting and I was impressed as you were with the kids, with the community. But since then, I went to a breakout meeting and I was not involved with the process at the individual meetings. But I'm as excited as anyone to see the results.
I attended the same one as you. I don't really have anything additional to add. The first meeting was really great, seeing all the students and stakeholders there, along with teachers and staff and admin being engaged, and just seeing how great everyone can collaborate together. That was really encouraging going into these to the next session. Fortunately, I wasn't able to attend the virtual one, so I'm excited to go over everything.
Robert, Jennifer, anything? No? All right.
All right, so each of the individual groups or pillars have a representative that will speak tonight, but kind of an overview that you do have the full document. We're not going to go through the full document, but it is linked in here, and it, just to give you an overview of it, Allie did some of these items in terms of our graphic with our envisioning our future and the philosophy, our vision and our mission, and then one of the pages has the overall goals of all of the 5 pillars. And then how it's set up in each of the individual ones is there's usually an overview, sometimes a paragraph or 2, and each of the committees, they go through and make revisions on those as well. So this has been updated, and I know I had an opportunity, I think, to attend all of them, but when people were engaged in this process, they really were, it wasn't just, well, we did this before and it was good and let's keep it. They really looked at it on what they wanted to change and did some wordsmithing and looked at these 5 years and what they wanted it to be for these 5 years. And then each of the sections has some we will statements, some commitments that pillar is guaranteeing or working or striving towards. And then each of the pillars has a format that's set up in this area. It has an actual goal, and those will be shared with you tonight by each of the representatives that speak. And then there's action steps or action plans that go along with each of those goals. There's the timeline that might be starting in 2023. The plan runs through 2028, but again, like we were talking, you want it to be a living, breathing document that just doesn't end up in paper or in Google Drive and then we never use it, or it's on the website, that we're always coming back to it, where there's those progress checks that we're getting into as well. And then you'll see that there's also people that are responsible for that action plan in terms of different roles and responsibilities. And then finally, what is the evidence of success that we know that goal has been accomplished, those action plans and steps have been met as well. And so as you scroll through, you will see that each of the pillars are set up that way. Standards of the heart is one of the pillars, talent development, stakeholder engagement, and operations. And so those will be the 5 presenters this evening. And so we'll kick it off with teaching and learning. So Jackie Heisman, one of our reps, was on that committee, and she will speak on behalf of the group tonight.
Thank you. So yeah, my name is Jackie Heisman. I'm a parent of the Pulaski School District, and I am employed by the Pulaski School District. And I was on the Teaching and Learning Committee, and you can see the goals that we set up there, so I'll just give you a few minutes, or a minute or so, to kind of look through them. But as others have indicated, we basically, as a group, everyone kind of put out what they felt was important, what we're doing well, what we think we need to work on in terms of teaching and learning. And then we kind of created some goals from there. So I'll give you a minute to look at those. And then on the next side, it kind of continues. So there's 6 more bullet points there. So if you had a chance to look through the bullets, basically I think to summarize, on the first slide, you kind of could indicate everything had to do with individual students, with their growth and with their success. So all of our goals kind of align towards those things, where we really are focused on being student-centered, taking each individual where they're at and challenging them to the next level, so that we see that growth, as evident by some of our growth scores on the Pulaski report cards, and then also looking at their success. On the second 6 bullet points on the second slide, a lot of that has to do with choices and opportunities and providing students with the tools and the resources that they need, the life skills, so that whether they're going out into the workforce or college and career readiness, whether they're going to a trade school, but they have not only those soft skills that make them employable, but also just the critical thinking skills and the problem-solving skills needed in whatever post-secondary option that they choose for them. And then the last slide just kind of breaks down for teaching and learning as a committee. Then we divided into groups, and some of us focused on the learning aspect of it, some of us focused on the collaboration piece of it, and some of us focused on results. And again, what that looked like was, again, just going to the different parts and brainstorming and really looking at the wording and the goals and kind of aligning them to our missions and our vision. And then also just kind of looking at the word choice and revising everything so that it's current and up to date with our goals for the future. Any questions?
Thank you, Jackie.
We have Amy Dillenberg here to do Standards of the Heart.
I'm Amy Dillenberg. I'm a parent of middle school student and high school student. So for Standards of the Heart, you can kind of read our we will statements. We will commit to providing a safe, supportive, and inclusive environment, both physically and emotionally. We'll cultivate an inclusive environment where individuals know they are heard, valued, and supported by our learning community. We'll engage and empower our learners, display respect, empathy, and responsibility, encourage our community of learners to share their knowledge and talents by mentoring others, and be the best that we can be, mentally and physically. So Standards of the Heart really spoke to kind of that whole well-rounded learner. Our 2 purpose statements we developed through our work were: we will focus on fostering healthy and positive relationships so that all individuals in our schools have a positive sense of self and are able to access and engage in activities offered by the school community as desired. And we will focus on our commitment to provide a safe and secure environment that speaks to understand, accepts all individuals, respects differences so that students, staff, and community members feel comfortable in our school setting.
Talent development.
All right, so for talent development, Chris Wells, the Hillcrest principal, and I will be presenting on this. Unfortunately, staff, July is a busy time for vacation, so this really came, envisioning our future came at a fun time for staff. We had just passed both referendums, so we were looking at compensation after the employee survey and also making changes within our benefit portfolio. So there was a lot of great discussion that happened during this. So I'll give you a moment, Jenny, can you back? Thank you. I'll give you a moment to read through the we will statements here. But much of the plan, it was very solid, and you can see all of it's about obtaining high quality staff to have the greatest impact and value for our students. So that would summarize the we will statements. I'll give you another moment to read those. So these we will statements led into 3 different goals. So the 3 goals are: we will focus on creating a system-wide culture of learning, improving and innovating. All employees at PCSD will be contributing members through collaboration and planning to create opportunities for efficiencies and sustainability.
And then a couple of our action steps that we picked within that first goal was really collecting feedback from all staff regarding the professional development that we have here in the district. And that will be in collaboration with the teaching and learning pillar. And then also educating all staff on these pillars. You know, there was a handful of staff and stakeholders and students that were part of the work, but how do we go back and communicate the rest of that to all staff? So those are 2 of the action steps with that first goal.
Next one is we will focus on attraction and retention of staff. PCSD will become a destination district through compensation, benefits, well-being, professional development, and culture climate.
And then a couple of our action steps within this goal is really prioritizing the compensation and benefits and making sure that we're competitive with other area school districts. And then also implementing different supports for staff and their well-being, whether that's through Apple Core, PD, internet, webinars, so different things that we can do there for, really focusing on that well-being of all staff.
And the final goal is we will focus on employee engagement and satisfaction. All employees in PCSD will be engaged in the workplace and community to maximize performance to better serve our students.
And then a couple of our action steps within this goal is really understanding what the staff value and how do we get that feedback from the staff. So through different surveys, focus groups, really kind of focusing on the right work. And then also allocating time and resources. How do we celebrate those successes that we're seeing in the district and really capitalizing on that positive communication, that positive PR to showcase what we're doing within the district at all of our schools.
Stakeholder engagement, that's me. I'm Jess Witt. I am a former kindergarten teacher of Pulaski. I am a lifetime resident of the Pulaski district. I have 2 children in the district, and now I am a stakeholder because we own 2 businesses here within the Pulaski Community School District. As of 3 days before COVID shut down. It's great fun. Great time to open a business. So I really wanted to get involved because obviously PCSD is obviously a big, huge part of our family, a part of our community. The name of our business is called Centered because our family is centered here in this community. I joke because I am half of Pulaski and my husband is the other half, and that was the only choice I had in this community. But we definitely know a lot of people here a lot, so to be involved definitely is something I feel very passionate about. We here on the stakeholder engagement, there was a lot of great conversations about how do we get to everybody, and you can see that on there, like, yes, it's easy for the ones who are in the school every day, but what about those community members whose kids have graduated, maybe they're retired, maybe they're snowbirds, they're only here part of the year, like how do we tell everybody what we're doing and share that message for the ones who aren't as involved as the parents of kids who are running their kids around all the time. So we talked about a couple of things. So you can see here, our plan is to work together as much as we can, but to be authentic. We do some great things here in Pulaski, lots of great things. So how can we share what we're doing, but also have those conversations at those events? And so at our next one, we created 3 big goals. And these are pretty big, I think, to take on as a group. The first one was the authentic communication. We're committing to a community survey, and really as a committee, working on what the survey results are, analyzing it, being at community events as a committee to see what's happening and to be able to have that personal communication with everyone in our district. We listed a bunch of events from polka days to sporting events to just those overall community activities that are happening that we can be involved in at a level of the committee and also district leaders. The second one said that we are going to create key characteristics. Obviously there's things that attract people to Pulaski. We had that motto, Greater Strong, for so long. We really want to bring that back and really have our Pulaski story and tell what's happening here because it is a strong, tight-knit community, and how can we continue to build on that. And then we talked about ways to using our communications department to really get to those people who, one, don't have kids, elderly, all of those things that we already talked about, to reach them where we're at. We have a great community newspaper. We've talked about, how do we utilize that even more, because that doesn't necessarily just hit our community, it hits beyond that. And then our third goal was to strengthen the relationships between schools, businesses, and community members. We really wanted to go back to old school. We want to create a PCSD hotline that is basically like our gossip center. So you call in, you find out what's happening, or you ask questions. But we also talked about how parents and people in the community or in the district get sky alerts. Maybe there's a way that we can opt in, all community members can be able to get sky alerts that are appropriate for them. And then there's a lot of what we call local experts within our community here that we can definitely tap into to be able to create different things and to keep track of what's going on within our district as well. And then we also talked a lot about trade programs and, you know, these company-sponsored events that are happening and how do we go about creating and building on that as well. So lots of really great things.
Operations, the operations team is not on vacation, we're just not a lot of public speakers, so you get me to present. The first two on our we will have to do with resources, so when operations, when we talk about resources, mostly talk about people, their time, and services they provide, and then there's also, you know, items and what we do with them, right? And then the last we will is pursuit of operational excellence. You know, it's kind of an odd term. I appreciate it throughout the district. I use it a lot. You know, I think that's performing at a level that others aren't performing at and that they want to replicate and throughout our departments, food service, technology, business office, HR, transportation facilities. They're all facets of those departments that are at that level and they're constantly trying to improve. On our goals we have, first one's a large one, safe schools. When you go into details, almost all the pillars touch on some form of safety. Operations touches really on all of those. It's what we can provide to service. It requires items and resources and time. Fiscal responsibility is always an ongoing one. Anytime you're dealing with public funding, that's a necessity. The next one is a focus on community. So you know, obviously the district's a large part of the community here. What we do with our resources and facilities impacts them greatly and they rely on us as well. And then focusing on maintaining and growth to meet needs of students.
So any questions you have at this time?
So it sounds like there's been a lot of great discussion and work to date. What are the next steps in terms of continuing the progress and you know, like Jess really talked about, and maybe she talked the most about really the goals of what they have in the future and kind of continuing that work. Are there specific goals and continuation of each of these pillars?
Yeah, so we have different people assigned to the different parts of our action plan. And so it's a matter of getting together with those different groups of people. I believe, Allie, if I'm correct, it's things that are ongoing, and our plan is to start again as the school year ramps up again and kind of go with that.
Yeah, and it really was, once we broke into the pillars, it was up to, we really wanted the people that were taking part in those pillars to have a decision making, like how do we want to meet, how often do we want to meet, what does that look like? Stakeholder engagement obviously is going to be one of those pillars I think that is probably going to be needing the most, just because we're engaging with the community more and the public and taking a look at what information we need to get, working internally here in the district and then externally outside in the district. So I think we probably have more plans of being out and about just because of the nature of that pillar. And I know, you know, like with teaching and learning, I think that's like that continued communication with families. And I believe the other things will come through updates, right, Mark, with operations and, you know, people talent. Allie, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more to that or.
Yeah, it's neat because much of the goals, they align with one another. So oftentimes you'll have the talent development and stakeholder engagement, whether it's through communication, through staff, or when it comes to teaching staff, teaching and learning, a lot of those goals go together. So a lot of our strategies will align. When you see, we'll be working on, you know, different surveys together or different ways that we can impact culture in our own building, but then what does that look like district-wide? I don't know if I answered your question or if you want me to go further.
No.
So how often can we kind of expect like an update on where we're going with our goals? Have we met goals, progress on those goals, just so we are continuously knowing where we're at?
Yeah, I think that's probably a conversation to have with the core team. We had originally thought it would be easy to black and white it and split it up into months, but that's not as easy to do depending on when you can get together, how far you are in the work, what you're waiting for. So I think that's kind of an ongoing conversation, but it will definitely be throughout the year. We'll be talking about this, and we probably will wrap everything back in to our pillar work. So when we're mentioning something, we'll be talking about this is part of the work that we're doing with our group, that we're working with. That's how I'm envisioning that happening.
I just pulled up the notes just to kind of look at what we had discussed, and we set up a rotation where about every 2 months there would be one of the groups coming back to present their status each year about where they're at with the goals. But one of the things that we talked about that we didn't do well on the last Envisioning Our Future is bringing our committees back together to kind of have those updates and look at the goals and our progress and where else do we need to tweak, because again, we want them to be fluid. If things need to be changed or added, you want that to happen. So we talked about like 2 or 3 months before your committee would be presenting, your pillar would be presenting, that group would get back together to look at their evidence and their measure of success and be able then to adjust and make changes and then prepare for the board update.
Thank you.
I have a question. Committees are great, the goals are wonderful. How do we spread it from those committees to our whole district? How do we get them all, everybody to know these things and understand them and live them?
We had a lot of conversation, I think, through stakeholder engagement. That's kind of our key role, is promoting out, right? And having our community members be part of the school community instead of, so it has to really be a back and forth conversation. So I think that's part of our, really making sure that information is shared back and forth. So as far as getting it out everywhere, and having that conversation, we're going to have to work at it. I think that's a...
No, I'm gearing more towards all of our school employees should know what this says and believe in it and live it every day.
For sure.
Well,
How
Chris,
does that happen?
You mentioned that being one of your goals in people talent. Did you guys discuss how to accomplish that?
Let's see if do you have it up, Allie, or I can?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how detailed we got. I don't see the specific details around it, but much of the conversation happened that once you have staff on board, that's going to filter into students as well, right? So it'll be a culture, it'll be a whole school culture. One of the things that we need to look at aligning is once we have this, how do we get down to that behavioral level from an employee perspective? So that could align to employee evaluations or appraisals. It could align to our goals from a student perspective and what they live by. I know the middle school has, I think, three things that you have from a student perspective. What's that called?
Our life skills.
Yeah. Right. What?
4 of them.
Thank you for missed one. So that certainly would take time though. So we haven't had a ton of conversation about that, but we would have leadership team involved. Maybe something we would eventually bring to the guiding coalitions. We're getting feedback from all staff as well.
And then one thing I would mention is we had our learning leader retreat, and today, as we were wrapping up, we talked about, and we've decided that instead of calling it a graduate profile, we would look at something with learners, so a learner-centered approach, lifelong learning, a portrait, a profile. That word we haven't settled on yet, but that's something that will involve all of the community in October, November, December, somewhere in there. And we'll lead through and we did this 20-some years ago. We were talking, and some of you might remember being in the new high school and going through a process where we looked at what does a graduate of Pulaski High School have and bring, and knowledge, skills, their dispositions. And so that's something that we want to do again and involve our stakeholders as well and open it up that our businesses, our community partners, our churches, our parents, students, and that was one thing we really emphasized because Amy shared a video where it even had our younger students involved, which sometimes we don't do. We jump right to our high school students, and we maybe don't always involve our middle school and our elementary students. So that's one example of bridging that and trying to get more involvement.
You guys are giving me all sorts of good details. I was way up here. That brand new first grade teacher, how are they gonna know what this says?
Like, is this like packet going to be delivered either physically, paper-wise,
Or
or via
presented-
email to
presented to
every
them.
staff member?
Presented to them at in-service or something.
Right.
You know, you're talking about what the workings of the school, and I totally know and believe that's gonna happen. Like you said before, you don't want a book that lays on the shelf. Well, if you never put the book in front of them, it's not even gonna be on the shelf. How are you going to get these ideas and goals?
I think the answer I have for you is it's ingrained in the culture. A lot of our guided coalition is, one of their main objectives is developing the culture of our district and each building. In doing so, guided coalition helps communicate that. It starts with the mission vision, and this is really our action steps towards all school improvement.
I don't want the action plan, I want these certain things like this, right in front of them, so that they know. You know, when you join the Boy Scouts, there's a full page that tells you exactly what you're getting. The Boy Scouts are this, this, and this, and we're here, there for this.
And they get those things.
Well, they'll naturally have access to this. I mean, and it definitely can be something, I mean, they know that, I believe that there's been enough communication that's already come out. I mean, everyone was invited to take part in this. So this will naturally be the document that they will see. And it is just ongoing work because this is the work we do every day. So it will be, this wording and vocabulary will be more in front of them than it probably has been in the past. And it will be coming to the forefront. And as far as, you know, whether they have access to it, everyone will have access to it because it will be a living, breathing document for the district that we'll continue to work on, and they'll continue to get invited, and everyone continues to be invited, and every time we send things out, people can always join teams, and that includes community members, and that includes all of our staff. So that opportunity is always there. So yes, they will actually physically have it, and it would be up to building leaders to go into depth, I guess, within their buildings, and I certainly can give an overview at our welcome back as to the work that we've done and what's been presented.
I would say from a new teacher perspective, HR and technology will meet with them, and so those types of things will come through loud and clear in the work that they do with the new staff. And then we do a presentation vision of teaching and learning, and so definitely ours will come through that part of it as well. We have an infographic created that shortens it because probably handing them the document isn't going to get big bang for buck. They're new or they're busy, they want to get in their classrooms, they want to get going, so it's very difficult, and you're welcome back to dig so much into it, so you have to keep coming back to it at different points when we have them all together.
And that would be part of the goal once we have the students between business, tech, and art really review that. It would be wonderful to have a one-page, and maybe not everything is on there, but people are going to recognize it, they're going to know it, they're going to live it, and then there'll always be more detail that we come back around at the all-staff in-service and or during the onboarding process.
And I think we've seen too many times the phrase rebranding and then having that fall flat on its face and it just being kind of blah. So it's better for us to do small pieces and really truly understand when we talk about what does all mean, when we say all means all, what does that truly mean here in our district, and how are we engaging our staff in order to embrace that. Any other questions?
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the SRO presentation and discussion.
So I shared a document with you. This is just a discussion, questions. I actually had shared a document with you as board members for you to be able to put on questions that you had. Thank you for helping, because that helped Kurt and Mike and myself guide through, some of the questions that maybe we still didn't have answered for you. And I had shared in, I think, an email or two ago just about the process of, this is a workshop meeting, so we want to have really great discussion tonight, have more questions come forward as we have a discussion, so that if we need to take more time and answer those questions for you because you aren't sure of the information we're giving you, we want to make sure you have that as well. If we don't have a whole lot of questions tonight come out from this evening and we move forward forward to the next meeting at the July regular business meeting. I do have this slated right now, I believe on the upcoming agenda. It's possible having this come up for being a listed item on the agenda on the July 26th meeting. And I think we have it listed as possible SRO recommendation, just so you kind of have a glance ahead. So we do have Chief Rankus, Chief Kitzman, and Hunter is here this evening with us as well to just kind of, we're going to go through what we have here on paper. This isn't a formal presentation anymore. I listened from our board workshop. I got bullets in here. Do you see my bullet points I got? I made it pretty clear, gave you the information I felt that you needed to know, and then we do have the two chiefs here tonight that I thought that we could, take on some of those questions, and they'd like to share some information with you as well. So I really started with the why, because I think that's very important. I mean, it truly is. We want to have increased SRO services here within the district. And the purpose of having great SROs and having our SROs, the work done here in the district, and I took this right from NASRO, and I firmly believe, if both chiefs, when they looked at that, this is truly what being an SRO is to provide those valuable resources to school staff members, foster positive relationships with our youth, develop strategies to resolve problems affecting our youth, and to protect all students so that they can reach their full potential, and then to provide a safe learning environment in our schools. We've had a lot of conversation around that the driving purpose and force of having SROs within the building is not about policing powers. So when we have had that conversation, that truly is, it's wonderful to have the safety of an SRO within the building, but the purpose of that SRO is not for them to have policing powers. It's to create the environment where all students feel safe and they can learn in a safe environment by getting those supports and resources that they need. So we are coming to you with this. This would be the recommendation that would come to you at the July meeting to increase those services from a 1.25, which is what we currently have, to 2.5 positions. 2 positions coming from the village of Pulaski. Those positions would be full-time year-round SROs, and then a 0.5 position from the village of Hobart Lawrence, which would be a 50% cost share for full-time school year SRO. Mark Logan's going to talk a little bit about budget. I'm just kind of giving you a run through of this memo, and then from there we'll move on and talk about communication, and then we can talk a little bit about placements, which those pieces still can be fluid and have conversation around. The accountability and schedules, what do those look like, how we're going to be making community connections, and then what do other SRO programs look like. So with that, I think, Mark, if you want to talk a little bit about budget, because I think that that's important, and let's talk about community funds and get those questions answered.
Yeah, so I just shared what now last year was as far as a budget and tax impact for SRO services for the district. $128,000 of community fund dollars were allocated to SRO services. That was at 1.2 FTE from the village of Pulaski. Tax impact mill rate 0.05. What that comes out to per $100,000 of value is a little over $5. So again, if you look at an average Pulaski value, which is $300,000, $15 of your property tax bills went to SRO services. The 3 budget scenarios I put together, some of the cost share and whatnot are really just for number-wise. I reached out to, I had already had a couple of contracts for SRO services. I reached out to local districts. There really isn't any consistency among districts what they do. That's because each department is different. You have some that work with sheriffs, you have some that work with multiple municipalities. So there was no consistency, so I took some and just kind of their cost share just to put it out there. But in that scenario 1 would be the impact of the recommendation, which would be a mill rate impact 0.11, so that that what was 5 would go up to 11. So about a double in tax levy, but again, overall, about $33 on a $300,000 valuation across the district.
And then Mark, when you were talking with those other districts, our size,
Yeah.
can you talk about that information as
Yeah,
well?
so the only thing that was consistent was number of SROs, we were the lowest. across all districts that I talked to. And then the other one was community fund. Every district I talk to properly runs it through community fund. There isn't one district that looks at it in any other manner. So those were the two consistent factors. So, you know, the timing or when they worked was all kind of fit the needs of what the district had.
So do you have any questions about the budget aspect of it? Because I know that was, we got a couple questions on there about budgeting and how that was run and how do other schools do it, and sizes, how many SROs do they have?
In terms of sizes, is the 2.5 recommendation that's coming to us consistent with districts of similar size?
Yes, yeah, so Howard Swamico is running 3, they have 5,000 members, so they're a little higher on that end. Ashwaubenon, 2,000 members, 2 SROs. Denmark, 1 SRO for 1,400, so they're all, you know, right along in that alignment. Green Bay has 11 SROs, but that's, you know, kind of a different beast compared to us, so very similar.
So we keep referring to Hobart as 0.5, but that's a full-time officer the entire time during the year. So
Yeah,
we're
so
playing with the weird number there.
I know it, so I changed it on, I updated the memo today after reading it, so I changed it to a cost share of 50%. So it's a, in my mind, it's a 0.75 FTE, so that's why I used the term school year full term. But as Chief presented, it was a 50% cost share.
So the real number FTE is 2.75, right?
Yes, yeah.
So from going from 1.25, jumping to 2.75, financially, and also just to see where we are in evaluating what the SROs are covering each time, even at full-time. I mean, is there a way, or would it make sense to phase this, where we start with 2 full-time SROs, you know, Pulaski, start that out, see how that goes for 2 full-time, see where the resources are, what can't they reach, what may they need extra help in, and then evaluating that to add on additional. I feel like it's a big jump, not knowing or going in to reevaluate what 2 full-time would even look like. Because it's a jump point to a full-time is, you know, I think a big jump. So I guess that's just kind of my train of thought, just thinking, just jumping into a full, you know, 2.75 seems like a huge jump. And seeing where, you know, we're at in a year with 2 full-time, where that makes sense and where they could use additional help if needed, or maybe they don't need additional help and it's not necessary for us to spend that kind of money on having an additional 0.75.
Yeah, I think my recommendation then would probably to go back and have that conversation with both of the chiefs again, knowing that we want to service the entire school district. And knowing that Hobart did come forward, then I think we probably would have, you know, we'd probably have a different conversation about how does the one full-time from Pulaski, and then what does that 50% cost sharing look like from Hobart? If that would be a phased approach that you want us to look into, you know, we could certainly look from that avenue as well.
And Mark, can you remind us how Hobart is kind of a large section of our school district, right?
Yeah.
In terms of our number of community members and tax base?
Yeah, I don't have population breakdown, but land value, which is really, when it comes down to, is 25%. So if you recall during referendum, we heard that a lot of Hobart pays 25% of our tax levy, right? So I believe they're the largest, or they're about tied with the village as far as equalized value.
So, but from a student perspective, because that's what we're doing here, is trying to get these SROs in our schools for our students. Like, just looking at those numbers, so the recommendation has 3 SROs, SRO 1, 2, and 3. SRO 1, the recommendation came as Sunnyside and Pulaski High School. That's 1,600 students. SRO 2 would be Glenbrook, Fairview, and the middle school at 1,500 students. And then SRO 3 would have 620 students. So from a parity and equity standpoint, we have a pretty big swing, especially with the high school and middle school mixed in there. I think we have a responsibility to not only do right by Hobart, but do right by our students as well. And that's asking a lot from those 2 SROs in Pulaski, almost 1,000 more students.
So I think part of that, and jump in, Mike, if you want to, or Kurt, you as well, you know, are part of this conversation. I think when you're looking at those numbers, that also really needs to remain fluid. So if we did go back and we looked at this as a phased approach, that would be part of the conversation I guess I would have to have with Chief Renkus, would be the fact that are you willing to, knowing that our main goal is not policing in our schools, and right now we have 1.25 going out to all of our buildings, correct? So what does that look like? Then we would really have to think about things different, because we know that there are times where our SRO is needed more efficiently at our high school and our middle school. So then what does that look like for bringing on more help from Hobart Lawrence? Would they be willing to go to Sunnyside or take a look at one of our other elementary schools? So I guess we would have to have that conversation, and that's not something I could answer tonight for you. That's why this is a workshop, and that's why we need the questions to come forward.
Or spend time in the high school and middle school, because their students are there too.
Well, absolutely, but then what does that, you know, how does that look, and how quickly do we need to be working with a municipality or jurisdiction, or if primary work at the high school is at times needing help for things that you would need to have, and Steve's here this evening, you know, I guess we can ask Mr. Linson as well. Is it primary work at the high school that we would need to ensure that we have Pulaski always stationed close by there as such, and then how does that look?
I mean, it's always, I'll use the word luxury. Luxury is probably not the right word. The procedure's always been, if they're not readily available, we contact, we call dispatch.
Road, right.
Yeah. Or we have, if both Adam and Hunter are on, we're made aware and we contact the other. It's not that there's never services available, but we also understand that they have to move to wherever the need is at any given point. But there's always someone available. It's just, it may not be an SROs in some cases. And that's in very extreme situations where we would call dispatch, to be honest with you.
I do think one of the main goals, though, situating and bringing on more membership, and Chief Kitzman and I have had a lot of conversation around this, is to really, unless it is an absolute emergency, our SROs are ours for the week. You know, they're our employees. They're not our employees. We subcontract so that they're in our buildings for those 40 hours during the week. And knowing that the 2 that are here in Pulaski are year-round, 12-month, we really do have a big job of ensuring that we have presence with them in the evenings or during the summer months as well. So that, you know, that I think Kurt and I have been doing a good job about just having that conversation back and forth about what does that accountability look like. How are we telling our story as a, you know, community SRO, and being that partner in the building. So this is also because Steve is saying, you know, like sometimes we don't have access. It's because we only have 1 or 1.25. So that, you know, that's difficult for us as well to have them spread all over the district. So it's not that I'm not opposed, and I don't think that the chiefs are either, about a phased approach, but we feel by looking at the data that's in front of us and what other districts are doing, this is a very good move at a good time for us to move to having the 3 working in the district. And if we're going to come here and land in this spot a year from now, you know, we should do this now we should make the move to do 3 instead of you know, going 1 at a time.
In talking about this phased approach, I guess I'd like to learn a little bit more about scenario 2 and 3, because it looks like that's a phased approach backing off of scenario 1 a little bit. And if you said cost sharing is different than the FTE, then scenario 2 and scenario 3 really recognize less than the 2.5 FTE then, right?
Yes.
Okay, so can you talk to me about what the contemplation is why we would start with scenario 1 and then move to 2 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way it currently works, the way it's worked since the inception of the SRO in Pulaski is it's been 100% paid for by the school. So when this whole conversation began about a second SRO, it was the initial envision that we had 2 SROs year-round that were in the schools and then provided services during the summer for the community. Not only in the schools, but the entire community, whether it's just in the village or even the school district at the initial time. So as the conversations progressed, it was brought up like, well, what about? It wasn't necessarily like, this is what we're gonna do. It's like, what about some type of cost sharing? In the event that maybe 2 SROs aren't what's needed full-time. So it wasn't necessarily, it was more just a what if. So those scenarios were brought in the event of the second full-time was approved, and now we go through a full year and we look at we go through a full summer with 2 full-time SRO community officers, where are they struggling for stuff to do, or do they have an ample amount of stuff to do? Then if now it's struggling, now let's keep 1 full-time, and then I can work with my board to phase out and back down to a 75-25. Then during the summer, I would pull 1 back to the road, but we would still have 1 full-time. So it was just a bunch of different options to see how it initially went out, that we could look forward. I don't think it was like, instead of this, we do this, or it was just a grab bag of, once we knew how the first year went, maybe we could look for something different, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you.
I'm confused because I thought the district cost share, you changed it into talking about amount of time, but wasn't it that Hobart is paying half of the bill?
50%.
50% of what it costs for that officer?
Yep.
I'm really disappointed that Pulaski can't pay some of us.
Well, that's a good question. Have we explored it? Have we gone to the village board in
It's
Pulaski and said?
Never. From the start of the SR program, it's never been brought up, it's never been discussed by the school board, by the village, nothing. It's just, that's the way it's always been since the beginning.
So going into, chiefs, you can speak to how long these contracts are. If we're gonna ask you to do this and we approve it, how long of a contract are you looking for?
Our West Pier contract is yearly, and we reevaluate it every year based on the services that we're providing. If they're effective and efficient police services, and I'm providing positive service that you are all happy with, then the relationship continues. If not, then they'll seek service elsewhere.
Pulaski is a 5-year contract, and then it renews after 5 years.
So is that something that the school should approach the village board? Or you would approach the village board?
I've already had discussions with our village president. He's not opposed to it, but with having it a certain way for so many years, it would have to be a phase for us too. Otherwise, we would just pull back services and there would be no SRO. It's not that they wouldn't be willing to do it, it would just have to be a phased approach for us as well.
Which makes sense, because the village already has budgets that they use.
Well, I
and do-
understand.
Okay.
So do we.
Okay. Well, exactly, but we've been doing it this way for so long, and if they.
But not increase, not at this double the amount. Our village budget is for the original amount. If we add on, then we're doubling our cost.
Right.
They're getting an extra officer hours. Hobart is willing to, Hobart Lawrence, I should say, just excuse me for that, but they're willing to help pay for this officer for the time that they're in our school.
Well, we give
For
it
the
back for
year.
3 months. They get 3 months that we're paying half of. So it's not perfectly 50-50.
Are we paying that 3
No,
months?
we're not paying 3 months.
No,
No.
it's 50.
It's just the 9
it's,
months.
You call it 50-50 of the year, so the officer costs, whatever was on my proposal, split that in half, 50-50.
And we don't have any services for 3 months.
Right.
For the summer,
Right.
yeah.
So we are paying
Right.
for that 3 months of them going back to the road for you?
50%
Yeah,
50% of it.
But we're not paying for it.
We are.
Yes.
Paying 50%
Well-
of it. So we're saying 50-50,
We're
but
paying
that's not
50%,
perfect.
but it's not 100% like this.
Well, I agree with the chief in doing the phased approach with the 2.0 revisited a year. I agree with you with doing it incrementally. I want to make a motion to approve the .75 addition to the Pulaski SRO program as presented by the Pulaski Police Department at the April business meeting. This would be a 1-year contract or a 5-year contract with the Pulaski Police Department. And I would like a show of hands.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? I do have a lot of questions, so we are going to go into discussion section. Chief Kitzman, first of all, I guess I need to read what is your motion and what are you proposing?
I make a motion to approve the .75 addition to the Pulaski SRO program as presented by the Pulaski Police Department at the April business meeting. This approval would be a 5-year contract with the Pulaski Police Department.
And you are looking for 100% of cost sharing for 12 months of 2 SRO officers, is that correct?
I'm sorry, that was,
You would be looking for 100% of the share would be on the Pulaski School District, and that would be for 12 months of 2 full-time SROs.
for 2 full-time, yes, it would be 100%.
Talk to me about what those 2 SROs are going to be doing all summer long that are going to be servicing the school district. How is it justifiable that our school district, when we do not have our students in school full-time, that we have 2 SROs on duty for 40 hours a week for those summer months?
Sure, well, if it's being funded by the community fund, then it's not just the school, it's the whole community, right? Because it's outside of the 4 walls, so it's anything, it's not just the school stuff, it's the whole community.
Well, why?
That's part of that, right?
But it's community connected to the school. It's not community. We don't pay for a community officer. It is school connected to community. So talk to me how that works during the summer for 4 months.
I guess I might have read that requirement wrong.
Flex time, isn't it, the flex? She's asking about flex time.
No, if you go to the DPI, if you go to the DPI description of what a school resource officer is, their job for the community is to connect the schools to the community. It's not for us to fund a community school officer outside of the school time. It's really that connection. That's why it is a school resource officer with a community in mind. So talk to me how specifically 2 full-time police officers, 40 hours a week, make that school community connection in the summer hours.
Okay, before I answer that, we have to talk about the funding and where that comes from. If the funding is coming from the community fund, which is by Fund 80, then I think that expands the scope of what that is. Then it is essentially an SRO and a community officer.
I would beg to differ based on how the DPI defines it, but tell me what 40 hours looks like for 2 police officers.
Well, it's not 40 hours to begin with, because over the course of the year, they are building flex time, which does benefit the school because you're not paying overtime, right? So over the course, to kind of go from the start of the school year, over the course of the year, they, regardless of how many hours these guys put in, they only get paid for 40 hours. If the school requires or asks for additional services, they have to be compensated for that. So they build flex time for those hours that are asked during the school year.
In reality, then, how much time are they working over the summer?
It depends on what is being asked of them during the school year. I can't give an accurate, because that all depends on what is being asked of them, or the type of calls, the type of investigations. So when it gets close to, and during the school year, they may use some of their flex time. So that all depends on what they use. Like if during the, let's say, spring break, there's no school in session, I'm still gonna require them to come in because they're being paid. They don't just get off because the teachers are off. They still go around to all the schools. They still make sure the properties are safe. They still take care of all that stuff. And if they want to burn flex time to be off, then they have to burn flex time. They don't just get that time off. So once they get to the beginning of the summer, we look at how much flex time they have, and then they kind of take off. And then I say they kind of, because we haven't even done it yet. I mean, this is the first year since the start of the program that they're working throughout the summer.
Have, throughout the entirety of this program, do you have an accounting of where they are, when they are, and how much time they're accumulating during the time that they're on?
No, I can't. This is only my second summer being
But
here.
not you specifically, your department?
No,
There's no accountability?
no. No, I mean, it was never asked. It was never by the school, by.
It's never been asked of the district to know what the
No.
resource officers are doing?
No.
Can I kind of clarify? I think you're saying like, say homecoming week, they might put in 60 or 70 hours. They get paid for 40.
That's it.
Then the first week of June, they might get that 30 hours back.
Correct.
That's
So kind of for example too, I made up like a mock schedule for the chief per se, right? It can be a fluid schedule in the summer. The way I kind of looked at it too is summer school runs about 8 total weeks in summer, right? So we would be there for those 40 hours for the summer school. So like 7 to 3, for example. We'd be in the schools, both of us, or 2 SROs. And then if there are, or if there is a week that summer school isn't in session, for example, like 4th of July. So that week we can run community events where we're out and about, for example, like Bobbers with Cops, like a fishing event for the kids and for the community to come to, where we are there and kind of orchestrating that whole event. Also that a plan that can also be put in place to fulfill the 40 hours too is, it's called CEPTED, it's a crime prevention through environmental design program that I'm certified in to give prevention ideas to school districts or school building and businesses that can give safety features to them and new ideas. I think Chief kind of provided a little bit of the other community ideas too that can be run to fulfill those 40 hours. Officer Winkler, Adam, he has kept like a timesheet of things throughout the year to say his adequate time that he's fulfilling his payment, right? But in that summer, being a new program, 2024 summer would be the first full summer of having 2 SROs possibly on the road and within the school. But just keep in mind that summer school is a big piece where that's 8-ish of the weeks of the 12 in summer that are those 40 hours. And then the other times would be like Polka Days, that's 40 hours itself. And then additional community events and things like that that can easily fulfill 40 hours a week.
So when you take out summer school that time, when you take out any flex time that they built up, you're really down to a limited amount of time. So then what I would do, not to say everything on this list is going to get done every summer, but this is like a working document where it's like, okay, you have so many hours that you need to fulfill. Pick something on this list and coordinate it and get out there and do it in the community. So this would just be like a grab bag of ideas. And I know it was brought up in one of the other meetings about stuff that, well, isn't this what police departments are already doing? And the answer is no, it's not. I kind of, and Allison and I have had this conversation, it's kind of, in our world we have like random patrol and directed patrol, right? So an example of that is our call car that's out right now. They're just randomly driving around patrolling the streets. They don't have a specific area that they need to go to. They're just randomly driving around. If I have a problem area, I might tell that call car, you will go to this area and patrol. That's directed patrol. So if you kind of relate that to this list versus a regular officer that's on duty, yes, a regular officer that's on duty might take care of 1 or 2 of these, but there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. There's absolutely no, because their primary goal, their primary focus is the road. Now, if you have a full-time community SRO officer year-round, these become directed, because I'm telling them, you will do these things for the community. Then there's no choice. They have to do it. So that provides a benefit to the children and to this community.
So I think to answer your question, because as a taxpayer, I did do a ride-along with Adam, and he has now, I don't know if that's directed by you, Kurt, or where it came from, but he has a very detailed sheet of where he is when and what incidents he's working on and where his time is spent. So it is in force now. I also asked him the direct question of how many hours have you built up, and he said at the most I had 110 hours that I worked overtime essentially, that we didn't have to pay overtime for, that he attended community events for us, football games, or wherever else he is. I asked him who tells him where to be or who requests, and that mostly comes from Janelle, it sounds like, our athletic director. So, I mean, Adam's been completely transparent about where he is and what he's doing. And
Yeah, I think I can speak to the accountability. So I reviewed the SRO contract probably 18 months ago, and it was the first time I'd seen it. And I'd asked about the 20-80 hours. That's when we sat down and said, what does 20-80 hours mean? We were trying to figure out what the summer hours were. So that we did ask about accountability. You know, prior to me, it was reported that they received a report of similar to what Adam's doing this year. So that was kind of asked to say, well, let's track the hours this year so that we can have that accountability. So it is an ongoing, it's been asked for, and it is being done this year.
Mark, when you called around to other districts, how common was it for SROs to be working in the summer?
Again, it's a mix. It depends on how consolidated the school is and how busy of a summer school they have versus, you know, what it is. So it varied. You know, if I had to put a percentage, I'd say 60% of them were 75% school year, and then, you know, about 40% of them had an SRO run all year round.
Can I ask, Hunter, what do you think, what do you envision doing at summer school?
So I stepped in there once this summer. It's kind of been a busy summer for me, per se.
Okay, but now it's not a busy summer. You're full-time. What are you doing?
He's getting
Full-time,
married.
what I'm doing.
He's in the process of getting married, so that's actually my business.
Next year, Red Barb, so those 40 hours, even when I went in and stopped in, it's that piece of building the connections with the kids. Like I sat down, colored a picture with a kid. I went to where they're dissecting owls and things like that, and I even saw Mr. Strasberg that was here before instructing like hunter safety, things like that, where we can be there just as that extra set of eyes. And we're in full uniform where that time gives us that piece where we can build those connections directly with them, where they might not be in a school setting where we get to see them for the 30 minutes. It's more to sit down and them to get to know us and us to get to know them. But to answer your question, for those 40 hours, for the periods that summer school is in session, both being there for that entirety of the program there, since there is 1,200 kids, that's a big ask. It's 1,200 kids with an unlocked building, things like that go in our mind with the safety feature. But then running 3, 4, 5, 6 different community events, bringing community members, you guys are part of it, where I invited each one of you to come to National Night Out, things like that, where we're providing that also, where we might not have that 40-hour week per se, like I said, 4th of July, where we can run that event or a few events to fill that time and be with those kids.
Okay, you just said unlocked building. We have locked buildings.
Summer school is an unlocked building. Middle school is unlocked. I guess that's
at certain points in the day.
I would say the expectation is that it's not an unlocked.
It would be, yep, it would be. But, right, those are different features and different mindsets too, where I can bring in like Alice instruction to the summer school staff, or different avenues of different thoughts with that staff and getting training and different ideas that we can also be a part of that. It's going to be a long process and a big program to kind of undertake, but that's what 2 people or 2.75 would help us do, especially in that summer piece, is to make sure those kids are safe and staffed too.
I think too, there's summer school classes that we currently have that I think would merge well with an SRO, just, you know, like, for example, you know, like their second bullet is engaging with kids in the park. Well, I know one of the summer school programs is playing at the park. So they literally walk down to the park and they play. Wouldn't it be great if we had an SRO there to point out safety things at the park? I mean, if you watch the news, I try not to, but you see horrible things happen at parks. Things get left behind at parks that are dangerous to children, and especially in a time right now with fentanyl and things like that. Like, wouldn't it be great for our SRO to talk to those kids and say, hey, you know, these are the things that you should watch for to be safe in a park when you're playing. And if you do find something like this, you know, what should you do? So I think that we can, you know, look at our summer school program and look at the classes we're doing and just see how we could include, you know, an SRO in that, and not an everyday class, not every single day you're going over it, but to pop in and, you know, see that they're learning.
And that brings me to my next question overall.
Yeah.
Where's curriculum and how are we gonna develop it?
That we would be working together to create that curriculum, taking a look at what we're currently doing, and tweaking it to the needs of what we need to do now. So that would be the next step in this. And the communication piece is also a large portion of that as well. I would just encourage you to think about, you know, I know we have a motion on the table, but I really, when you're talking about, we know the work that's lying in front of us, and we know what 2.0 is going to do. We really need to remember that we had a large portion of our school district approach and ask to be a part of the services that we offer here in the district. And adding that additional piece out in the Hillcrest area is unnecessary. As I'm saying to you, it is a need in the district the size that we are, bringing on that additional SRO to be able to have those services available to us here in the district. So I would encourage you, as we're moving forward, I want you as board members to think, how are we going to be talking to our Hobart families? What is it that we're going to say to them, we've decided that we're going to go with 2 officers only from the village of Pulaski, and no, we don't care to be working with you, even though you are taxpayers in this district. I want you to think about that, and I want you to have a conversation here and now.
That's not my motion.
how
My
we're
motion
going to have
isn't
the
disapproving the 0.5 or 0.75 for
Your
Hobart.
motion was
My
to bring
motion,
down 2.0.
my motion is 2.0 as, we can vote on the 0.75 next month or whenever you recommend it, but my motion is simply for the 2.0 for Pulaski.
Okay, that was unclear to me, Dennis.
Yeah, it was
not.
never my intention, I can't speak to anybody else, it was never my intention
No,
to vote for
I'm
that as a package.
simply
And so then I
approving-
just have a question, I'm just curious as to why.
They presented differently, so I'm assuming
I want to ask
that's
Dennis,
why they're different.
why is it that we would want to do that recommendation tonight separate when we have been trying very hard to work so collectively and collaboratively together, Village of Pulaski and Village of Hobart
I
Lawrence?
just feel that this has dragged on for a very long time, and I just want to move the ball forward, and I think the opportunity is very good to do it right now.
I'd like to ask
We can-
Chief Kitzman and Chief Renkus, do you agree that the motion on the table will move the ball forward? Would you both recommend that we move forward with this motion?
Yeah, well, the motion cuts the Hobart Lawrence Police Department out entirely. So I don't know if there's any guarantee that this partnership would continue then based on the lack of knowledge. I think if there was a motion, I would like the entire motion to be handled with inclusion, as the superintendent said. We came together as a group to present as a group. But I have said from the beginning, I'm 100% supportive of Chief in his endeavor to get 2.0. I think it's a for sure need for the school district.
And Chief Kitzman?
I'm conflicted. I support his need for one in Hillcrest, but I've made it clear to him, like, I mean, these guys, they like Illinois, right? And that kind of came out of the blue, but I understand his need and I support his need for wanting Hillcrest, but I am conflicted on the Illinois part. But we have a very good working relationship, and this is what I didn't want to happen. I did not want questions from the board directed at us to try to split us.
That's not my intent.
Yeah, and I know what yours is, like, you just want to split the vote.
Sure.
Right.
We
And
can vote
I
on
get
the
that.
0.75 next week or whatever you
Or if somebody
recommend.
makes a motion tonight, then.
Yeah,
Sure,
and
make
I
a motion
understand that,
tonight.
and I can't, I'm not gonna be split, I mean, we work very well together, and I'm not gonna go against him. I support his need for one in Hillcrest, I
think we should vote.
but I'm
So
conflicted on the Illinois.
I'm sorry, discussion is still open, and until all questions are answered, we will not be bringing this to a vote. I do have additional questions, so we will continue to go through this. Chief Kitzman, based on this motion that's before us, it will be 2 officers, and at this point, there is not a discussion at least, or another motion on the floor that there would be any additional SROs. So you would be splitting all of the schools including Lenoy and Hillcrest. Is that something that you envision would be appropriate, that 2 SROs would handle all of the schools?
Well, it's below what national recommends. I mean, I'll say that, but we do with 1.25, we can do it with 2, we can do it with 2.75. I mean, we're gonna, whatever the board decides, whether it's just Pulaski, whether it's Hobart and Pulaski, we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it work.
Mark, I have a practical question for you. The scenario for the motion that's on the floor, there's not the mill rate and the tax increase impact. Are you able to run those numbers to let us know what that looks like for the community fund tax impact?
Sure. Yeah, give me a minute here. While we're on me, I just have a couple of contract logistics if I can bring them up.
Sure.
So we have a current contract with the Village of Pulaski. I should say the board has a contract. It's valid through 2026 right now. So that contract needs to be redone based on, if the motion goes through, the contract needs to be redone, needs to be brought back to the board as well. So I guess if I can make a suggestion, it would be to, the motion would be to contract with the village, to move forward with a contract, unless they have one here tonight, we can't approve it, right? So I don't want to put us in a scenario where we're approving 2.0 and then we don't have a valid contract with them. Also, the board and the village need to agree to break this one, which they would if they want to redo this contract, but it's written in here. So maybe I can drop the current contract in box and everyone can have a moment to review it, but I don't want to get us in a situation where it's approved and not contracted, right?
And just for practical purposes speaking, Chief Hisman, from your perspective, the motion would require us to break the current contract that we're in and enter into a new contract. Is that something that you have to get approval from the village to do that?
They would probably want, well, so that's kind of, because there is a contract for a full-time officer already in place.
Correct. The motion contemplates that we would be entering into a 2.0 for 5 years with the village, which is not part of the current contract. So we would have to break that contract and enter into a new contract. Is that something that you have to bring to the village to approve from the village ends?
I would think that they probably should know about it, but the language of the full-time is there, because we already have one existing one, is what I'm saying. Yes, we would have to break the part-time one, but we do have one existing already.
Was this whole thing intended to start for next school year?
Correct. And then Kurt, if you would be doing that at the same time, that would most likely be the time to have that conversation like we had just talked about, moving towards that scenario 2 of the 0.75, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, scenario 3.
2 or 3.
Scenario 3.
Right.
So
it was for one of the officers, wasn't it, for one of the officers?
Yes.
So that would require us to change the contract again then. So if we entered into a 5-year contract for 2 SROs, 100%, you're telling me that the conversations would happen between now and year 5, and so perhaps a 5-year contract isn't appropriate because we would be looking to potentially change those cost share arrangements.
Yeah, I mean, whether you sign it and open it back up or that's not my decision. I mean, that's not for me to.
I think if we are if both parties, like a contract, if both parties were in agreement that we would.
Right now, the termination is, so we're in year 1 of a 5-year contract. It says written within a year's notice.
Right.
So it would have to be a agreement outside even the contract terms to terminate, renegotiate, bring forth a new contract. I don't want to get us stuck in a position where we're moving forward knowing that contract per board policy of this amount needs to come back for approval.
Right. So
That's just my caution, and not on either direction, but it would, either way a contract would be coming forward for services.
I'm just trying to reconcile what the motion is before us and the practicality of, if it were approved tonight, how that works in both our jurisdiction and the village, because I don't, given this, I don't know what the village would need to know.
Okay. We still have these other scenarios.
Yes.
All that is doing is approving the first 2 things of
Correct.
scenario 1.
Correct.
It's not eliminating anything else.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
It's not limiting our ability to negotiate with Pulaski in the future to get a lower
Right.
rate.
Or
It's
over.
not doing anything else. I suggest we call the question.
Well, I just want an answer to the tax impact from Mark, if he is able to give it to us, just so that we understand what the current situation would look like.
Probably be real close to the 10.35.
Yeah, so it's a 0.08 on the mill rate, so $8.70 per 100,000.
870.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can you repeat it one more time? I'm sorry. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, so it would be $8.70 per 100,000
From 5,
from 5
524.
from 524, so, okay.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Any other questions? No. There is a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? All those opposed? Nay?
I didn't vote.
And one abstention. That means that with 5 and abstention, we have 4 members voting.
That's a quorum.
So the motion carries. Okay. Moving on to the personnel update. We do have a question in the community. I'm not allowed to take questions, but it's not that we're not allowed to take questions. You have a question. We've just voted. Mr. Reynolds?
You know me. I'm not wearing any name tags. I greatly appreciate the quick moment to add a can of worms to this. My ex-middle schooler, now a freshman in high school, commented sometime back about busing and the concern of safety on the buses. And we talked about the 4 walls, we talked about the SRO, you talked about what they're doing in the summer, and a whole bunch of other things relating to things that are stuck still. The parks, the playgrounds, in the buildings, things like that, but nothing about what the students are going under your care, going to the facility, to their homes, or from summer school location at the middle school to Hillcrest, to Illinois, things like that. I realize it's not going to be discussed tonight, but I would ask you to consider what are happening for safety, because we saw it on the slides about safety, safe place, things like that, and it includes the yellow limousine. What are we going to do to help out so that the students feel safe on the buses? If you ask my now freshman's son, he says he wants to ride home with his sister, but his sister doesn't always drive home. She goes to work, blah, 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 and I've got other kids at Hillcrest. The question for your consideration, please, is what are we going to do about the yellow limousines and student concerns involving that? Thank you.
Thank you. We have ongoing discussion about the curriculum that we'll be working out, so we'll certainly ask them to add that to the discussion. Thank you. That is a very good point. Moving on to the personnel report.
All right, so we have 6 new hires who we'd like to welcome, and I think you all had the opportunity to meet Manager Smith, so welcome. We're excited to bring you on board. And we also have a handful of resignations, so we wish them luck. We have quite a few moving on to kind of their next growth, different opportunities for them.
All right.
Where are we at with staffing? Can we talk about that? Like, how are we looking? We're just a month and a half out now or so.
We got out ahead of it this year, so we are actually doing quite well. We do have a couple specialists and then the ones who just resigned right now. But for the time of year, we're looking better than prior years.
How many positions would you say we have open?
So right now, we still have, I just counted before this, I should have had one check. 12 positions open. Some of them have multiple, so like we have a couple cooks. Typically we wait this time of year to just start posting our support staff positions. So you'll see a little bit of an influx, but it's just because we hold those vacancies until mid-July to post. but from a teacher and specialist, so we had a few OTs, SLPs this year from our ads. We're in really good shape.
I will put a plug in for food service. We have a couple leaves for maternity and some medical leaves, also some resignations. But food service is a hard one to advertise on weekend, especially because it starts so far out. It's a great one to do word of mouth. So if you're talking to your PTOs and you have somebody who wants to pick up some hours, we certainly are looking for help come September right now.
What do those positions start at here?
I say 14.50, 14.50 is a standard cook. So.
I think a real positive piece of personnel and hirings this year, especially when we're looking at professional staff, is that last year at this time we know we're making some improvements because benefits have become better. Our pool is much larger, so we're seeing 40 applicants again instead of that 12, 6,
5,
5, not even applying because it wasn't there. So we know the work we've been doing is truly helping that. So that's positive and very much encouraging. And again, the leaving is not necessarily to a neighboring district. It's either private, it's completely in a different line of work, those sorts of things. So that's encouraging for us because we feel like we're doing the right work. We're going in the right direction.
Sorry, have we moved on to your report?
No. We are still waiting for a motion to approve the personnel report.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
All right, I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the personnel report as presented. Any other questions or discussion? No? All those
That's
in favor?
not why I asked that, though.
All those in favor, aye. All those opposed? Okay.
I want to go back to the PSO thing,
Motion carried. What?
the police officer thing.
Okay.
If we're going to do anything, we need that decision for the August annual meeting,
September.
because we need that number. So
September.
it's not something that we can just throw away.
There will be a recommendation on the agenda for next month, at the end of this month.
Okay.
I'll touch base with Chief Rankus tomorrow and we'll have a conversation and make sure that we're okay and we have a recommendation.
And I think we should open up that communication with Pulaski too about helping fund it. Because like you said, they have a budget now, but if we're talking down the road, help kick in, I mean.
And that was one of your asks on the sheet. We all asked for that, and we all agree that we want the services that should be coming to the district need to be services that truly are meeting the needs of our district. And that's why we need to do better. We know that. So we have to have more services. We need to meet the needs of our kids and our families here in the community. And both chiefs would agree with me on that. So that's what we're here to do. It's
Thank you.
going in a different direction than what I thought it would, but we'll get there.
All right, moving on to superintendent update.
I want to welcome Matt, and his wife is here tonight with him as well. So Matt and JoJo, welcome to Pulaski Community School District. We're very happy that you're here. We're excited to have you as our new principal at the high school. Matt was with us for the past 2 days at our Learning Leader Retreat. It's going to be great. We're very excited. Matt has a lot to offer. He has more of a system overview because of the work that he did before. He's not coming from a principalship going into a principalship. He's actually coming from a district level job where he worked in curriculum and looking at secondary ed. So that's exciting for us because he can kind of, he knows what the approach should be and he can implement that back into the building. So we're very excited that he's with us. So welcome. And would you like to say anything to the board and us this evening?
Just thank you so much. It's great to be with the group this week, and I'm excited to get in and get going on starting the new school year, and just really working hard for the district to create a culture of excellence at the high school and do the best we can for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, welcome.
I also wanted to just, from our retreat that we had when we worked with WASB, one of your asks was to have a school year template. So as I'm working on that document, what I am doing is pulling together sample memos, which you already have access to because you can go back archived anywhere in Box and see those memos. But as that's coming to you, the reason you're getting old memos or sample old memos, and some of them might be, blacked out or dates taken off them, or however those come to you. I just wanted you to have this is the meaning of AGR, so that, or this is what seclusion and restraint means, so that you have kind of an idea. And I was going to break that by months. Is that what you're looking for, or is it easier for you to just be directed to go back into Box and take a look at samples? What would be easier for you as a board? I guess I'm asking.
Might be a piece of paper.
With bullets.
Much as much as it has bullets, yeah.
Bullets.
Okay.
Yeah,
Highlight
something.
maybe.
All right. Okay. So.
And I think for new board members coming on too, as, board evolves always, it would be great, to have right from the start and, with everything else we already do. It's just, I think it's a great way to get started.
Well, I was just always under the assumption that because you had access to Box, and I guess that's why I was that confounded me a little bit, because you really can take a look at, in Box, the meetings are listed that way, and a school year becomes very redundant
But
every year.
they're not in order. Box doesn't, they're out of order. But it would be nice to have that list of the,
But this is the typical things that happen in July, these are the typical
Right.
things that happen in August. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's simple enough to put together. But there will be things that we miss, obviously,
there'll be
because not everything is the same every year, fiscal year. Okay. All right. Other than that, other updates, we just came back from our 2-day Learning Leader Retreat. It was great. We had a lot of great conversations. The work is getting deeper and deeper on our learning, so that is, some of my principals are here tonight, and I think they would attest to the fact that we were tired because it was a lot of learning. And I'm going to do a shout out to, because my teaching and learning team is here for the most part, Jenny and Amy and Lara, and Julie is not with us, but wow, you girls really did an amazing job of just pulling things together. We had some of our other building principals presenting with us with the team this year, and just the work that goes into those 2 days right coming out of school is pretty amazing. So I know you've put in a lot of hours. I know these have been 60, 70-hour weeks for you, so I just appreciate all that you're doing to make sure that we're getting it done and spending that time with our team. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you all.
Very appreciated, thank you. What's coming up? So we have, the community's going to be bustling and moving around here. I know there's an awful lot of talk about Polka Fest is coming. I saw some of you at Tournament of Roses dinner. The sponsorship of that event was quite awe-inspiring to bring all those kids together. And we just keep working here. Jenny will be sending some updates, inviting board to our events as the year kind of gets rolling in the school year. It's a shorter summer, but we have a longer summer next year because we'll be starting a little bit earlier, but getting out a little bit earlier. So those calendars and the events that will be happening as school starts up, we'll get those to you so you know what's happening as far as an invite to our welcome back day, and we'll keep you posted on those things. And that'll be coming out in a couple weeks, I would imagine.
And usually, I think the August board meeting, we do the PD update, and there we roll in the new teacher orientation and the welcome back. So
just exciting times in the district, just kind of getting the work done here, and it feels good. That's all I have.
All right. Any other questions?
Do you have any construction update?
Well, yeah, Mark, I guess we could talk about a few construction things.
Yeah, it's probably better if we had Nick here. Nick shared some photos today. He took me on a tour. So at our 3 main sites, if you go through Glenbrook right now, or if you're here during the day, you can smell it that they're working on ventilation and bathrooms and ripping them apart. High school is having bathrooms ripped apart. If you go out by Illinois, the whole site work is being done. So that's just on this summer work. Everything going according to plan and is as scheduled. Construction schedules right now, further schedules out. We're waiting on a budget update. I believe it's coming out this week for future work. So that would be a referendum update. Nick did ask me to update that for anybody listening, that summer school is locked. Any scheduled downtimes in the morning or at lunch are monitored doors, so just so everyone's aware of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, then our next meeting is a business meeting on July 26th here in the office There are at least 4 things on the agenda right now, and that is a possible SRO recommendation coming related to Hobart's and continued discussion. The 2023-24 budget updates, annual academic standards that will be part of this calendar that we hear every year, and then the annual education of employment and academic career plan. At this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Put in that motion to adjourn.
I've got a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and 2 seconds to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone.